Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On Podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another podcast. On today's show, we have Andrew Tai. He's the CEO and founder of MotoInsight, a progressive digital retailing platform that is helping dealers and OEMs create a modern retail experience for consumers. Andrew, welcome to today's show.
Hey, Brian, great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So, Andrew, for dealers and manufacturers who may not be aware of MotoInsight, give us a little thumbnail. Tell us a little history about the company.
Yeah, awesome. MotoInsight, we've been around for a little over 8 years now. And, the funny thing is, we like to say we've been tinkering with digital retailing before digital retailing was actually a thing. When we started the company, a little over 8 years ago, where we actually started was, we were operating a auto brokerage that operated almost like a virtual BDC for a lot of different dealerships. That was one part of our business, and where we got a lot of our early start to digital retailing is we would work with third-party marketplaces, and we built a number of third-party marketplaces on our own as well, capture all these leads, and then through auto brokerage would work those leads and turn them into sales for dealers. And what that looked like in the early days was a whole bunch of emails back and forth, to some in some instances faxes back and forth, scanned and signed documents back and forth. And so we were working with customers and dealers to put together deals before customers even stepped foot into the store. And that was really our early start. And over the years we built a lot of technology on the marketplace side, but as well as for ourselves to streamline that process. To make it easier to put those deals together. And that's really what has evolved today to what we call digital retailing. And so, it's been quite the journey over the last 8 years. One of the things that we think gives us unique perspective is we are the first users of a lot of the technology that we today enable automakers and dealerships with. You did mention automakers. Our history actually has more been spending time with automakers, working with Tier 1 solutions. And only more recently in the last couple of years have we been enabling dealers and individual franchises and rooftops with our technology. So, we feel we've got a pretty good perspective across all three of the big stakeholders, being consumers, dealers, and automakers.
Great, Andrew. Thanks for that overview. I stumbled upon you as we were doing the Automotive Analytics and Attribution Summit. You were one of the first people to deliver an OEM complete buy online solution, and that was for the Genesis brand in Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. We were working with Genesis as early as late 2016 when they were just starting to spin out from Hyundai and becoming its own brand. And there was an opportunity whenever you get to launch a new brand to really rethink the retail model and how things should be done from a customer experience standpoint, from a dealer standpoint. And so we spent a bunch of time with their global team actually, and they picked the Canadian marketplace as a bit of a test bed. A lot of success there. Happy to share some of the unique insights. But the punchline is that's been so successful for them in terms of a different way to enable customers to buy using technology. That we're now working with Genesis again globally to roll that out to the Australian marketplace, and we're certainly excited to be working with dealers in the U.S. as well. And so that was the first automaker globally to deliver an end-to-end solution where, in fact, at the beginning, a number of their store points, if you will, launched without physical storefronts. They were entirely selling online, from the customer's first click, selecting the vehicle, through to all of the steps you can imagine: trade-in, credit application, credit card deposit, F&I, accessories, all the way to document capture, document execution, and delivering the vehicle to the customer's door. And so, that's been a really unique learning experience for us, helping the OEM create that kind of experience and ultimately rolling it out with dealers. But I think it's important to note, as cool as that experience is, where customers can buy entirely online, one of the unique things that we've learned from that experience is while it's possible and we have the technology to do it, the vast majority of customers actually still want to interact with a real human being, a salesperson, in a showroom. And so that's where, even though Genesis, we helped them launch a number of points, if you will, that didn't have physical storefronts to begin with. They certainly are focused on building out their physical network as well. So that's been an interesting learning.
Andrew, thank you for sharing that, because, dealers who are listening to today's podcast want to go with people who are well seasoned. They understand consumer shopping behaviors. And by the way, if you ever need somebody to hold your hand in Australia, just let me know. I'll come down and help you in that market. I'm long overdue for an Australian visit. But on a more serious note, your company is working in the U.S. with Audi. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're really excited to be rolling out an experience called My Next Audi right now. That's ultimately going to be nationwide to all of their dealerships. It's a partnership with Audi of America and Audi Financial Services, where they're using our digital retailing technology, in particular to make it easier for an existing Audi owner to get into their next Audi with as little friction as possible. It's kind of cool. The inspiration behind this is, I'm sure many of us buy things on Amazon, and for those that have even used Amazon's one-click purchase experience, it's so convenient, it's kind of dangerous, right?
Yes.
And the inspiration there is, if Amazon knows your purchase history, knows your shipping address, knows your shipping your preferences, has your credit card on file, yeah, it's possible to buy with that one-click purchase. Now, granted, buying car and automotive is certainly more complicated than that. But using our digital retailing technology and unique integrations into Audi Financial Services and Audi of America, we're able to deliver something quite similar for let's say your Audi A7 is about to come due on lease. Instead of getting that traditional mailer that just says come on into the store, we can deliver a tailored digital journey that allows you to tee up your next lease before you even step foot into the store.
That's great. I'll share a recent experience. My wife Carrie's car was coming up, and she loved this car. She had what I call a reach car, but she loved this car, and she would in her mind, I'm going to get this exact same model. I just want to turn this thing in and have them give me a new one. And, the emails and the letters started coming, which for her were very confusing. What am I supposed to do? When am I supposed to go? It was surely not clear. Now, it just happened that through a friend in the industry, her reach car became affordable because we were able to lock in a friends and family, OEM discount. But I totally agree with you. When people are brand loyal or not, I think they're all treated the same at the end of the lease. Is that true?
For sure. And I think, it's funny that lease retention, or even you can think about it from a finance customer standpoint as well. When a customer is a little bit further along in their term, dealers have gotten smarter and smarter on how to market to those customers using equity mining tools and whatnot. But the marketing message is still very much, generic. It all drives back to, hey, come on into the store. When can you book an appointment? And so to be able to deliver a more seamless experience is a pretty big opportunity to engage customers in a deeper way. And, I think that's one of the big learnings for us. As I said, earlier on, we've helped sell thousands of cars entirely online, without customers ever stepping foot into the store. Now, in context, though, that's still a drop in the bucket. The vast majority of customers aren't ready to buy online just yet. But that's where digital retailing oftentimes, is all about, hey, how do I sell cars online? And that's the message that we hear most often, in the media, and where dealers almost kind of get distracted. But when you kind of peel the onion back a little bit, where we think the real opportunity for digital retailing is multifaceted. It's ultimately about delivering that better customer experience, but there's more specific and more tactical ways to do it. And the one example that I just referenced with Audi of America, that's very much what Carrie went through, is hey, coming due on the end of lease or end of term, how do you just make it easier for that customer to get into that next car? Using digital retailing technology, that's a powerful use case to apply it on. It's much more than, hey, how do I sell cars online? Because I think we're still quite a ways away from that becoming the mainstream experience. But there are more near-term use cases for digital retailing technology that can help make a difference in dealers' businesses this month, next month, and the month after that.
Andrew, thank you for just really going down to where the rubber meets the road. I'm sure dealers who are listening to today's podcast are shaking their head. This is not going to transform the way people buy cars in the next year or two. I think it's going to take a number of years for dealers to embrace more transparent ways of selling cars or taking cars in on lease. And I mean, there's so many different opinions. I've talked to hundreds of dealers. I've talked to dozens of DR companies. Everyone is kind of seeing it slightly different. But when we filmed people using DR tools on the market last November, it was clear that the consumer was still stumbling or hitting some roadblocks, not knowing exactly what to do next. And so, Andrew, one of the things I suggested is before a DR process starts, right? If each vendor has a different approach, a different order to the information they request, what's your thoughts about making sure when someone clicks, I customize my payments or tell me how I can buy this car, and they start a DR, is a video necessary to kind of tell them what the experience is going to be like?
I think a video certainly helps. It helps set expectations. That said, I think we've seen success with dealers, with or without a video. I wouldn't say it's an absolute must, but I think it's certainly a nice to have, and it's helpful. And we certainly help enable our dealers with a basic library of collateral and marketing messages that they can use to help set customers' expectations. But I was there, with you guys in November when watching those customers go through their mystery shopping journeys, if you will. And I think the biggest takeaway that we had from that, reinforced from what we see in the marketplace, is because the process is fairly complicated and there's a lot going on, the successful solutions really need to be almost more like a guided journey, if you will, where we have to help lead the horse to water, or lead the customer through the journey. And I think one of the challenging things that we see is oftentimes online experiences with dealerships. There's so many different calls to actions that ultimately can get confusing for consumers. And so one of the best practices that we recommend is have a single primary journey to lead the customer through, and don't bombard them with a dozen different calls to action, which ultimately just confuses them, and a confused customer ultimately doesn't buy. But I remember a lot of customers just had trouble going through the process because there were so many different things that they would get distracted on. So that's one of the many lessons that we've learned is having a clear journey, one single primary journey that leads the customer with the appropriate steps at the right time. When you break down, the best-in-class online experiences, online retail experiences across other industries, it follows the same pattern. We talked about Amazon earlier. That's obviously a journey we study a lot. But once you click that Add to Cart button, let's say you browse and you find the information that you want, and you find the product that you want. Once you click that Add to Cart button or that checkout button, one thing to note is, you can go check this out yourself. Amazon does this unique thing where they strip away everything. Every menu item, they get rid of the back button, they get rid of all of the distractions, no banners, as you go through that checkout experience. And it's a step-by-step guided journey, through shipping preferences, credit cards, all of the things that they need. And, that's one of the big differences to what we see typically in automotive online experiences is, this litany of calls to actions and the lack of a single guided journey.
Well, Andrew, I'll have to share with everyone a story. I was traveling, doing some workshops, and I picked a few dealers who were in this, workshop, about 20 different dealers. I just randomly picked 3 dealers to look at their VDPs. And the dealers were in the room, and I was showing them just how many different or confusing call to action buttons. And one stood out. It had 11 call to action buttons on the VDP. It could be a record, but it was get e-price or ask questions about the price and value my trade and email a friend and save this. And I was like, 11 different calls to action where it hit me. Digital retailing will effectively guide the consumer through trade, through saving a vehicle in a virtual garage, bringing them to a finance pre-approval system, getting their contact information, even emailing them information about the car. Maybe digital retailing, when done right, will finally get dealers to have a simple call to action, that journey for that car, because on the top of every page is a phone number. So if they really wanted to call the dealer, they can. I just think today in 2019 that having 5, 6 call to actions, which is very common, and then in the unique cases up to 11, is just a self-fulfilling prophecy of telling consumers it's not easy to buy a car from this dealer.
Certainly agree with what you're saying there. Our strongest performing dealer, when you look at their VDP, there's 2 calls to actions on there, right? And this is still a work in process, and we continue to experiment the call to actions with them. But there's 2 right now, and one is start your purchase, and that goes after the customers that are pretty serious. They want to take this next step and they want to go deeper. And the second call to action is book a test drive, right? And that's for the customer that is aimed at higher in the funnel, not really to go too deep into it. But that's a natural step for them if they're quasi interested and they just want to book a test drive. So 2 calls to actions, right? One leads into the full digital retailing journey. The other is a higher level lead capture that just is designed to engage the customer with the dealership. But I agree with you, fewer calls to actions and leading to guided journeys that take the customer through all the steps of the purchase process. That's really where we think is the winning formula. But the other thing that we wanted to work with dealers is there's no one size fits all solution. Some dealers have really great VDPs, really great processes that are set up for digital retailing, and they're thinking big picture in terms of, hey, how do we do like the whole online car selling journey? And that's great. But what we've actually found is the vast majority of dealers the best advice we would have for them is, let's just park the whole online, car selling thing. One, fundamentally, we think customers are a long ways away from actually wanting that as a mainstream solution. But 2, before you think about online car selling, let's get back to the fundamentals, right? Let's get back to the fundamentals and how do we get the little things right before tackling the really big beast of online selling, if you will. And an example of this is we did a mystery shop with a dealer recently, and what we did was just filled in the lead form on their website and filled in the lead forms on a couple of their neighboring dealers' websites. And it's just a fill form where we enter a name, phone number, email address, zip code, and then we asked, hey, interested in this vehicle, can I get a 48-month lease payment and a 60-month finance payment, on this vehicle, just to get a sense of, what it would look like, all right? And what was funny was every single response came back, roughly saying the same thing. It's like, hey, thanks for reaching out. Give me a call. When can you come in for an appointment, right? And that was the response for basically all of the mystery shops that we did. And so I think it highlights, before we can even start wrapping our head around online buying as a dealership, let's get back to the fundamentals. How do we respond to those leads in a differentiated way? And the way we trained that dealer was really, hey, let's differentiate your lead response simply by engaging that customer and giving them what they've actually asked for. So, when you respond, instead of just saying, come on into the store, it's, hey, here to help whenever you like. I've added the vehicle that you want into this digital shopping cart that I've configured for you. It has a full payment calculator and all the steps that you want to complete if you like, from trade-in to credit app and everything in between. You just click this link and you can take the next step. That's a differentiated response that goes back to just simply differentiating lead response.
I love that. That's using an existing process, but giving them a more richer answer. Andrew, I had a revelation last week. I was in Minnesota working with one of my clients, and the general manager asked, I really think I should be getting more leads. And I said, based on what? And it's like, well, look at all the traffic. And so what we did there, since they're following the Google Analytics standards, which I have published in 2016, we were able to see how many times people clicked on, get their best price, and then how many people finished it, and then how many people did two-way communication. And in the group, that's multiple group store, the range was 8% two-way engagement up to 18%. There wasn't a single store. After I left that group, I went to another couple dealers in Texas, then I went to some dealers in another city, and I asked each one, hey, do you have your website tagged for engagement? And there wasn't a single dealer that had more than 20% two-way engagement on those type of forms. So what hit me is when someone puts a test drive, like schedule a test drive, why do 99% of the dealers say, I'm not going to give you the test drive information unless you agree to communicate via email, right? It's a required field. Why can't the software just say, great, you want to come in for a test drive? What day, like with a chat bot or something, what day do you want to come in and what time? Why not seal the deal right there? Why are we still focused that they cannot get a price, they cannot schedule a test drive unless they give the email and wait until someone responds? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but it was a revelation that if those buttons today are getting less than 20% two-way engagement, why are we using texting? Why are we using messaging? Why aren't we engaging the consumer right then when they're on our website?
I think that's a great opportunity that you highlight, Brian. When we think about the promise of digital retailing, I think there are probably three different ways to look at it, right? There's the big message about, hey, future-proofing the business and differentiating the brand and delivering a experience called buy online or whatnot that is still unique and relatively nascent in the marketplace. That's the kind of the really big one. Right. But then when you start getting into the nuts and bolts of it, in terms of the audience that you already have on your site. So I think it's one, customers that are on the site today, the vast majority of them, I'd say 95% plus, right, never engage with any of the call to actions. They don't fill in the lead form. They don't, enter their personal information. It's because think about if we step out of our industry for a second and we put our consumer hats on. When was the last time you filled out a lead form yourself, right? And I love asking dealers this question because they're consumers too. When was the last time you went onto a website that you found a product that you were interested in, and then you filled out your name, your phone, your email address, and your zip, and you waited for someone to contact you, right? More likely than not, generally the response is either I can't remember or never, right?
Yeah, and so, Andrew, I asked dealers just this week, I said, hey, when you go onto a retail site and the pop-up comes up 3 seconds later, hey, enter in your name and email address to save 10% on your next order. I asked the dealer principals and general managers, how many of you filled that out? And there wasn't a single person who raised their hand. And I said, why? They said, because I know I'm going to get bombarded with emails. It just hit me. It's like, when someone's on the site and they're asking a simple question is, what is the best price? Or can I come in for a test drive? Why aren't we using chatbots and smart DR real-time solutions? Why are we still forcing this delay? And, well, I'm thinking my 22-year-old son, he doesn't email. He only texts and messages or calls. Do we have it still wrong by forcing consumers who want basic information to give us an email address?
For sure. And I think that's an opportunity in deploying digital retailing is allowing customers to go deeper into that purchase journey and self-serve before putting up kind of the traditional fill form gate, if you will, where high abandon rate, very few people actually, go through and fill in the form. And so, that process is certainly an opportunity enabling the customers to self-serve and go deeper. I think, I was in a McDonald's recently, and this kind of illustrated to me, how customer behavior is changing to want, self-serve. If you've been in a McDonald's recently, you'll notice that more and more of them have those kiosks, right? Those ordering kiosks, and there's fewer and fewer cashiers, right? And that just is a continued illustration of the evolution of customer behavior to want to be in control, to want to do things themselves. And so instead of forcing a customer to fill in a form as the only way to take the next step, enabling digital retailing solutions like ours that allow the customer to, whether it be see transparent pricing, do a first pencil, complete a virtual trade-in appraisal, or book a test drive in an open table reservation style experience. Those are opportunities to engage the users that otherwise would not have filled out a lead form anyways, right? And then, the other opportunity, as I illustrated in the example earlier, is even the customers that do fill out the lead forms, right? There's an opportunity to respond to them better and differently by, instead of just giving them static information or pushing them to come on into the store, book an appointment, engaging them with a purchase journey that they can complete, at their own pace on their own time. Those are more specific and direct opportunities that can impact the dealer's business in the short term, while, thinking about the big picture stuff around future proofing and the big goal of online selling and all of that. But, there are much more near-term opportunities that can move the dealer's business, even when it comes to using digital retailing technology.
Great. Andrew, as we start to wrap up today's podcast, I have gotten some great feedback that your platform and one other platform really has the best user interface. I really have found it helpful, but technology itself isn't going to change an embedded sales culture at a franchise dealership. I know everyone's at a different level of readiness. If there is one core thing that a dealer principal or general manager needed to buy into in order for DR to be successful, and maybe it's too hard for one or two things. If a dealer says, Andrew, I want to provide a more frictionless showroom experience, online experience, I want you to come in and fix me. If there was two things you'd have to get their buy-in or sign off on, what would it be?
That's a great question. I think, there's two different ways to look at it. I think one is, typically when we start working with the dealership, our process is that we want to work with two people, two champions. They could be your internet managers that are responding to leads today, or just progressive sales staff that are willing to do things differently. Typically, what we ask for is two people that we get that have full buy-in and are willing to do things differently. And we handhold and we train those two people through the best-in-class retail experience and the best-class practices. And with those two people is where we start building a use case and a case study inside of the dealership for others. What we found is sometimes GMs or dealer principals, they buy into the concept and they're really excited about it, and they want to change everything, overnight, or they, want to push really big changes really quickly. And we find generally those are short-lived and, run into a lot of roadblocks. So, as kind of contrarian as it sounds, the first philosophy is to think small, actually. What is the smallest increment of change that we can make at your dealership to prove results? And so typically when we say we think small, we start with as few people as possible, and we make the changes there and then scale them out once we've proven success.
I would agree with you. Changing 40 people's behaviors, 40 people's embedded processes. I remember when websites first came out and the early internet teams, they didn't say let everyone handle internet leads because people didn't know how to use the CRM. It was a foreign tool. And then it eventually became, wow, let's stop babying everyone. Everyone should be able to use the CRM and complete their tasks. And today, folks like David Kane, instead of a BDC, they call it a business development dealership where everyone is following a same playbook. I love your advice to start small. It completely makes sense because of the politics, because of the change management, and also to get the data for the dealers whole team to buy into. How about one more thing? If a dealer is going to be successful with DR, they have to take things slowly and what?
And understand specifically how they are going to define success. I think oftentimes dealers may get this excitement, hey, selling online, it's an exciting value proposition, and then they deploy DR technology, and they're not really sure if it's working or not. They didn't really think about how they were going to define success, and the challenge there is, they do it for 6 months, and then it's like, I'm not really sure if it's working or not, because the reality is, digital retailing is not this magic box that will just start selling cars without any effort or thought. If it was, I think, we could all charge a heck of a lot more for our DR solution, right? So going into it, I think it's defining some really clear ways that, hey, this is going to be successful for me. And it could be as simple as, hey, typically when we deploy with the dealership, we help them pick one use case to start with, right? And if, let's say that use case is we're going to respond to leads differently, instead of just saying, hey, come on into the store, we're going to adjust the process, respond to leads differently, and encourage customers promote this DR solution that we've deployed, right? So what in that case, what's the metric that we're going to measure? What do we want to move? Is it the number of user accounts that customers go through? Is it the conversion rate that we see on your overall lead portfolio that we deploy this on? So, having kind of really clear measures and defining a action plan that we believe will move those measures is the second thing I would say. Because otherwise, you go into it 6 months later, you're not really sure what was accomplished. And without a specific goal and a measurement to rally around, it's even hard to develop, the actions and motivations, because you're not really sure what you're trying to influence aside from, hey, I want to sell cars online. Well, that's a really big and nebulous value proposition.
Andrew, it's so funny as you're telling me that second point. I think of the years of working with dealers and them changing websites. They have a website, they're not sure if it's working great. They go to a 20 group meeting and the top dealer in the room is using this other website provider. So they switch, and then a year later, like, hey, this isn't working out. They switch again. And I've asked them, I said, have you ever set up Google Analytics to measure all the conversions and engagement? So when you switch, things like total conversions, SRP to VDP follow through, VDP engagement, have you measured? No one does. It's just a complete mess of just knee-jerk reaction. So that is a really great advice. Before you bolt on, add to, or enhance your sales process, understand what you want to measure. Make sure you have the data measurement tools in place to secure that data, and then set a reasonable timeline to evaluate the performance. Andrew, if a dealer wanted to learn more about the MotoInsight digital retailing solution, where would they go?
Yeah, just check out MotoInsight.com. That's MotoInsight, so MotoInsight.com. Certainly we'd love the opportunity to book a demo and take you through our experience, share some of the case studies and lessons that we've learned working with dealers. One of the things we find is that there is, again, no one-size-fits-all solution. Going back to even what you just talked about, setting clear KPIs, measuring them. What we found is that that different dealers have different goals, right? And that's where when we go in, we understand their goals, figure out the right use case to deploy the digital retailing, and align on metrics that relate back to that use case and that dealer's goals. And so I think there's no one size fits all, and it's always a conversation about how the dealer's doing today, what they want to change, what their vision for digital retailing is, and then wrapping the technology around that. So we'd love to have that conversation. If the dealers are thinking about digital retailing, have a specific vision, we'd love to engage with them. Or they hear a lot about digital retailing and they're not really sure what the vision is. We're happy to share our insights on what's working, what's not, and how to go about it.
Great. And in May at the 10th Annual Digital Marketing Strategies Conference, we're going to be gathering the top digital retailing thought leaders, technology companies. We're going to be bringing in dealers who are actively using DR tools. So it's going to be a perfect opportunity in the beautiful Napa Valley, May 19th, 2021, for any dealer who's interested in digital retailing truth, the realities of change, and the processes that seem to be leading best practice in our industry. Andrew, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone who's listened to today's podcast. And keep in mind that we have a full 3 months of podcasts dedicated to the leaders in digital retailing. So check back every Monday for the months of March, April, May, and June. We will be interviewing dealers, technology companies, and thought leaders about how to create a modern retail experience. So I look forward to spending time with you in a future podcast session.